Hello, my name is Joseph Turner. I'm a Senior Traffic Studies Specialist with MoDOT in the Northwest District Highway Safety and Traffic Division. My innovation here today is the Turn Lane and Signal Warrants Analyzer. A little bit of background to begin with. Whether or not a intersection gets a traffic light or its own turn lane for any given approach, and even down to if it gets a traffic light, how is the left turn to be treated, for example, on any given approach, whether it's they need to wait for an arrow or they can make a turn on a permissive movement, is governed by a lot of criteria. Primarily, it's a function of how much traffic turns in which directions every hour through the course of a day. And what will typically happen when we get a request, like somebody calls and says, can we see if this intersection needs a traffic light, or we really need a left turn lane here. What we'll go out is we'll have a crew go out and we'll count, they'll perform a count of the intersection. They'll get how many vehicles turn, which directions, go through, go left, right, make left turns, right turns in each direction, each approach over the course of a day. And we'll end up getting a lot of data off of that. It's just an enormous amount of data. And then we have in our policy criteria for determining whether an intersection needs a signal, needs a turn lane. It's just a massive amount of criteria. Anybody that's familiar with the manual on uniform traffic control devices, as well as our own engineering policy guide, knows that there's 9 different warrants for determining whether an intersection needs a traffic light. There's also several sets of criteria for whether does this need its own left turn lane, does it need its own right turn lane on any given approach. So if we could step over here, what I've done for all this is I've created a tool on Excel macro to where we can take the count data that's delivered to us when they go out and do a count of an intersection, and I've written a program here to where I can basically import that to Excel. Well, in our case here, we use a company called MyoVision for getting raw count data. It took that raw data, it figured it all up, added, and then compared to the criteria necessary, and of course all these hours met, so a signal's warranted. For a couple of those that are based on graphs, here it actually plots the points on the graphs. This is warrant 2 for our vehicular volume. Here's the data. Here's a plot against our criteria, our chart from the engineering policy guide. And here's the same thing for, I guess this particular does not, no left turn lanes warranted for this particular approach, but it automatically plots the points on the graph to scale. And lastly, as I mentioned, we can go down here and it can say, okay, for the westbound to southbound left turn movement, you need to run as permissive only in the late evening, early morning, and then protected permissive the rest of the day. I mean, if the input data were such and the other conditions met, it might in fact say you need to make this a protected only left, which in that case is you have to wait for a green arrow to come up to turn left. So it takes a lot of the repetitive calculation work, a lot of the number crunching, and takes it from probably a few hours worth of work down to a minute or two. So.